Hello, and welcome to the Women in Manufacturing Hear Her Story podcast. My name is Allison Graylis, president and founder of the Women in Manufacturing Association. I am so excited today to welcome our guest, Holly Paeper, a passionate leader who serves as president, Commercial HVAC Americas with Trane Technologies. Since joining Trane Technologies in 2016, Holly has held executive roles such as president of Life Science Solutions, general manager for Data Center Precision Cooling, and head of marketing and head of strategic sales and operations. Today, we'll have the opportunity to learn more about Holly's leadership in HVAC and her journey in manufacturing. Please join me in welcoming Holly Paeper to the podcast. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Excited for the discussion today.
Excellent. We're so happy to have you as a guest on Hear Her Story. And, we have now featured and profiled, I think, close to 50 guests on the podcast. And it's always great to hear an individual story about how they arrived in manufacturing and what the journey was like for them as they rose to their current position. So, as we hop into your story and your journey, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you arrived at your current role as president of Commercial HVAC Americas at Trane Technologies?
Perfect. Sure. Absolutely. So my path was maybe a non-linear path to get here. From the Midwest originally, studied engineering in undergrad and really had no business of being an engineer. And, while good at math and science, ended up in a path that led me to where I am today. So I'm really glad I took that path, but it wasn't as clear maybe when I finished university. So right out of school, spent about a third of my career in Silicon Valley. So I started out at Intel in chip design and technical marketing for microprocessors, and started my first part of a career out there. Loved it, the innovation, passion, and the pace, and found my way very quickly to the front end of the business and the product management path and the bridge between technology and business. Ended up going back to the Midwest after I got sick of living with 10 of my best friends in Palo Alto, California, and found my way back to kind of the industrial manufacturing company, Eaton Corporation. So spent another third of my career there, all in front end roles, M&A, product management, et cetera. And my husband's job actually brought us to North Carolina. And so we moved down to North Carolina about 15 years ago. At that point, found my way to Trane Technologies, actually sat next to my former boss at a charity event. And this is the power of networking. Found my way to Trane, and since I've been at Trane, fallen in love with the idea of sustainability and the impact that I can make as a leader. And I've been fortunate enough to have some really great opportunities here and now currently lead our largest business in the company.
That's huge. And I love that, as you cited, the power of networking. You never know where that next opportunity is going to come about. And we talk about that often as an organization, that so often people think it's only going to happen through a job posting or through some sort of more formal mechanism, but so often it is just meeting a person by kind of random occurrence, and that turns into a discussion and an opportunity, and it's often a really successful placement. So you mentioned kind of sustainability and that being one of the things that interests you about the Trane Technologies, operations and the opportunity. What inspired, do you think, for you that passion around entrepreneurism and sustainability?
I've always been a pioneer at spirit. So I feel like if I was born a couple hundred years ago, I'd be on a ship somewhere saying, let's go over there. So I've always had that in me. What I would say, growing up in the Midwest, spent a lot of time outside. I've always been a nature lover. I was raised to kind of respect nature. When I was in university, I actually worked for the local utility, and my first job as an intern was to be a voltage investigator. And I would go to people's houses when their power didn't work and, follow the people around who knew what they were doing and try to figure out why. And it became really fascinating to me about, well, why is it working and why is it not working? And even through school and after school, certainly when I was in the early stages of the data center world, you start to realize the power of power, right? And meaning and how important it is in terms of the scarce resources that we all have and how we use that and how we use it in the most responsible way. So, I kind of had this thread woven through, and maybe looking back, I can make the connections much easier than I can. I would say when my now 16-year-old was about 5 years old, he, for whatever reason, had in him that single-use plastics are bad. And, and he brought this whole kind of spirit where every time I was at the grocery store, I would pick up something and he would have a tantrum like many 5-year-olds do around, oh, why are we doing that? Or why are we doing this? And it crystallized for me, okay, wait a second, I need to be thinking differently and doing even more than I'm doing today. And that's what led me kind of to the path that I am today.
That is really cool. I love that your son helped you as well take notice of
Yeah.
how to be more sustainable and earth friendly.
Yeah, I mean, kids have a way of asking very simple questions and, out of innocence, and it causes you to pause. And certainly as parents, I know that many of us have lots of these humbling moments, and that was certainly one for me.
That is very cool. So as you look at your experience, which you've had a lot in some very different roles and responsibilities and fields, how has that shaped your leadership present day in HVAC? And what have been some strategic shifts at Trane that you have been most involved in or that you think have been most impactful?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it feels like in today's world where things are changing so quickly that there's no amount of experience that any of us can have to know all of the answers of what's ahead of us, right? Whether it was the pandemic or now even this year and some of the trade complexities that we're all facing. And on top of that, we watch what's happening from a technology standpoint in terms of artificial intelligence and the rapid pace of that. What I would say is that the thing that has led me to a moment where I feel more prepared than many is that I just had perspective across industries. And while at the time it seemed a little schizophrenic to go from this industry or that industry, right? As I think back, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do today without the perspective, whether it's perspective in different types of roles or different types of industries. And one of the things that, especially in a business like the one that I lead today, we cover 14 different vertical markets. And what most folks do not have the opportunity to work in all 14 markets, nor do I. But the idea of deep understanding around a couple of different areas and standing in a couple of different points to be able to see different markets allows for a different kind of perspective in how we tackle that. In terms of Trane and the ways that I've been able to bring some of this experience to bear in terms of the roles I've had here. Some of it is just around curiosity and being able to kind of pull a thread around something that others might not see a connection with. Think about even the data center kind of high tech space. As you mentioned, one of my early roles, long before it was fashionable, was really to take a look at this for our company and to get our company into that business. And a lot of that was just passion from early career saying, well, wait a second, that industry needs cooling and we do this, surely we can do that. And as a result of that, we ended up in a situation where we were more prepared than many of our competitors and the industry, frankly, to tackle that. I mean, I don't think any of us could be prepared for the rate and pace of growth and some of the things ahead of us. But I think there's as leaders, it's our responsibility to be curious, and whether that curiosity comes in the way of specific jobs we've had or different places to learn, so we can help make those connections for the team and for our company.
Yeah, that's great advice is that talent around curiosity and the asking questions. And we often talk to our members around the power of just speaking up and being kind of curious and honing in on those solving skills. And we often say manufacturing positions, whether it be something in production or in administration, one of the things that's pretty common is that no day is the same. And it is so kind of fraught with that opportunity for problem solving and just being curious. And so I think that's great advice around curiosity and asking those questions and finding those linkages that could be huge business opportunities for an organization when you just figure out where there's synchronicity or where there's opportunity between some other folks' pain and then a solution and a kind of strength that your organization might have.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I would say that some of the most insightful things, if I just think back to this past year, have come from team members who happened to listen to a podcast on something or learned something this weekend and said, wait a second, why aren't we thinking about it that way? And it's, I think the more curious that we can all be puts anybody in the position. It doesn't matter how much, power or experience you have, right? It's more around being curious and bringing interesting perspectives and having the courage to speak up, because a lot of those big moments in terms of strategy or direction come from little moments of information that somebody might have gleaned just over the weekend.
So true. And I think you also speak to that piece that I often try to instill in our team is just about being a learner and how to absorb information. I think so often we get so wrapped up into our devices and the stuff that we're already getting fed, and we go to those same news sources or maybe those same things that we personally find passionate. But also, if you can infuse in there some other learning that's maybe outside of your industry or in different spaces, because that's where I've often as well found, hey, wait, this is something I could apply in our own business or my own personal life, and it can bring great gain. And so I think that encouragement that I try to have with our team, and it sounds like you as well, absorb, learn other things,
Exactly.
bring those insights to the table as we're talking and having conversations, because you never know where that great idea can end up.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So, as Trane Technologies has embraced and has approached sustainability and has recognized the importance around sustainability and energy reduction, what role do you see these solutions playing in the future of smart buildings and infrastructure?
Yeah, it's a great question. You mentioned Trane Technologies focus on sustainability. That is our North Star. It's our noble cause in the company, long before it was fashionable, and it will be long after it's fashionable. But it's the thing that drives us because we know we can make such a big impact. And as we think about, we spend a lot of time in my business, we manufacture things, right? So we've got a lot of equipment. We also have services and we do things to supplement that. And, one of the spaces, to your point, that we play in is really this idea of smart buildings, smart cities, and kind of the power that connectivity can have. So we install mechanical infrastructure to cool a building, for instance, and then connect that infrastructure and then look at the data and do really great things with the data, whether it means being more efficient to solve a building's and a customer's problems, or we have enough technology so that building kind of self-heals. And so what I mean by that, for instance, in our world, you install a mechanical system in a building and it never operates better than it does in the day it was born, right? The birth certificate, the original day you put a system in, over time it'll degrade if it's not touched. And in the past, we've optimized that by rolling a service truck. So service technicians going to a site saying, let me optimize, let me, refurbish, repair, change filters, and do all the things that to make sure that building and that system could operate as close to perfect as possible. What we've got now is technology that can supplement what only people before could do. So we've been calling buildings smart buildings, for the better part of a decade, but it turns out they're not that smart. It still relies on a person to write a script or change the thermostat. And when it doesn't seem to be going okay, then you go back and manually change it again or send a service technician. We now have technology-based and AI-based solutions through a Brainbox, a company we purchased, to be able to actually sit on top of the building's controls and do a lot of that optimization automatically. So for instance, looking at weather patterns, looking at how many people are going to be in the building in the day and optimizing every minute. So what happens then, the buildings run much more efficiently. And we also can use our scarce resources, which are service technicians, a trade that is, very difficult to find scarce resources to do what they and only they can do to supplement this. So we're spending a lot of time now, not only around how do we make great equipment, how do we make more effective, efficient equipment, but also how do these systems come together in a way that is just smarter than yesterday.
I love that. So using technology to help your systems that you're installing in these buildings to be more efficient themselves. And then I love that idea of kind of the self-healing, or them using technology to be able to fix problems quicker, to not rely on the service technicians as frequently, and
Yeah.
to give kind of that customer intelligence as they need to when maintenance is needed or when something needs to happen to keep things running optimally. It's crazy how technology has really changed all facets of our world. I think about it even with my vehicle. I get alerts about the service needed or things to be warned or to be wary of. And I think that these connected devices and technology have really helped make all of our roles and our responsibilities a lot easier. And as you said, the people scarcity piece, what a great kind of way to use those people and their talent best in the
Yes.
most kind of critical situations rather than for things that could be self-healed or fixed remotely. So very cool.
Yeah, and I think the way that we've been thinking about it is, right, where can we augment our workforce to be more effective or to supplement where we have scarce resources? And what we're finding, not unsurprisingly, is the combination of where our people who have this tremendous depth and experience and capability and gut instinct in a lot of ways can complement some of this amazing technology that does things that we didn't do yesterday. And when we bring that together, it's magic. And frankly, our customers are saying bring more money, buildings are operating more efficiently. Like everybody wins when you get that recipe right. But things are changing so quickly, it's really hard to get that recipe right. And we continue to work on it.
So I know you're a strong advocate for STEM and diversity in leadership. What initiatives or programs have you found to be most effective and significant in driving change within industrial and tech sectors?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm very passionate about this because I've spent most of my career as the only in the room, whether it's in university, I was the only person in my engineering classes, or, all the way to even this moment. I can't even tell you how many times there are where I'm like, okay, there's nobody who looks like me here, but that's okay, right? We're going to keep going and do this. Part of it, I would say pretty consistently is around kind of creating community, and community, certainly the version of that Trane's got today is not unlike many other companies, which is just employee resource groups or business resource groups where people kind of rally together, and we do development and provide opportunities for mentoring, coaching, et cetera, for folks in the organization. And so one of the things that we talk about here with our women's employee network, which is the resource group here that we've got around women. We've got, lots of different flavors of diversity and lots of different business resource groups, but I'll talk about the women's network here, is really helping our women leaders understand the importance of the power of a board of directors, right? And having different people to influence the sponsors and mentors in different flavors, and how and when to be building those relationships. And, so I think that's one thing. I think the other piece that is really powerful that I get super passionate about is really some of the work that we do with even middle schools, high schools, trade schools, and kind of the outreach piece around trying to encourage people to come into the industry and come into the field far before they would ever even be thinking about a career. And because it's some of those moments that become so pivotal around, making sure to encourage students to be excited about math and science, and making sure that before the moment of truth, before the moment, right, far later in their career when they have to decide, they get excited about staying in the industry and staying in the field in general. And so I do a lot of volunteering at that level, all the way to groups I'm on around women. In fact, we just had an event this past week and trying to get more women on boards of directors when they get into kind of later career and the stages of nearing retirement, et cetera. And so I think across the gamut, there's so many opportunities. Creating community, whether it's community in the company and folks that are in the working phase of their career, all the way to expanding that and finding ways to give back, to feed the funnel, and then also to kind of send folks off that in a way that will net serve all of us in the future as they pull kind of some of their contacts and networks forward.
Those are some great things that you're doing. And I love that you mentioned the women on boards. That's something I'm personally passionate about, and something that we found is a gap for us as an organization. We have so many experienced, talented women who, are in the stage of kind of what's next in career and soon to be retiring. And that's where we're kind of tapping in and looking into what resources could we lend to help, infuse their talent onto more privately held and publicly held companies to lend those insights. And their expertise is sought after. We look at kind of the companies looking for manufacturing experience and again, marketing experience, strategy experience, all of those great skill sets that so many women in industry have. And it's just then linking them to those opportunities. And as you were talking and we were talking earlier, so many opportunities do happen through relationships. So
Yes.
it's finding that nice mix of how do you create those networks and that community for these women as they're looking for how to lend post-career expertise. And then as well, how do you make them kind of board ready and really kind of best candidate for boards of directors? And so that's something that's an initiative for us in 26 and beyond, because we have a growing number of this retired community or soon to retire who have such great expertise to lend and
Yes.
have many more years of great kind of service that can happen in a different way.
Yeah, it's something that there's such a huge opportunity, and this idea of networking. I mean, like many, right? I'm a mom. I work. I've got a big job. My husband works. Like we have a house of cards of life. Like everything is carefully orchestrated, and it's really important to make time for networking. And I personally block time on my calendar every week to network, whether it's in the company or outside of the company, because it makes me more effective at my job. I think one of the things that we talk about, and a lot of the folks that I mentor, I talk with, is in the same way we think about career development plans, at some point in your career, you should be also thinking about what is your board development plan. And so you start to think about, okay, the experience I'm going to get next, right? The job I want to get next, needs to have this kind of characteristic for my career. And then this would be really interesting, in terms of attractiveness to a board, and where do you find the combination of that? So you can be kind of deliberate in the same way we are about our careers, about kind of positioning ourselves for boards. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. I think we're all learning more about how to navigate all of those things together, right? In the busy lives we all lead. But I think with a little bit of planning, there ends up being these beautiful moments where it all comes together. Like, okay, that's a lot easier if I just do that, right? Because it solves this and this and this. And that's something that I find that a lot of the women that I mentor are tremendously gifted at, is multitasking and the ability to kind of connect these dots. And so just a little bit of planning serves you well on a bunch of fronts.
That's great advice about the planning. And I think we're missing that so often in those mentoring conversations is what's your long-term strategy? And if one of those aims or areas of interest is serving on a board, then where can I gain that experience that would be invaluable for that future opportunity? So I think that's really smart that you're coaching women and talking to them about that as they make decisions that could ultimately yield great results for them in a different timeline of their career. So, as you have had such great experiences and have had some very impressive roles and responsibilities, what is one piece of advice that you would give to women in industry who might be listeners today and or aspiring women in industry?
Yeah, this advice I give to my child all the time, which is if you're going to be a blade of grass, be the best blade of grass you can be. Meaning, and what I mean by that is every role that any of us play, regardless of the stage of career we're at, you have the opportunity to leave some footprints and to make an impact. And sometimes the role you have feels small and you want the bigger role, you want a different role. And the first question that I ask myself is, have I left footprints? So when I leave, people say, oh, okay, that's the thing she did. And I think I could almost write my resume over my career by the spirit of, yeah, we do a lot of stuff, and there's 100 things on my list of things to do today and tomorrow, but what's the thing every year that I'm going to do, or that you can do in the role that you're in today, however big or small that role is, to leave footprints and to make a lasting impact far beyond your time in that role. And if you treat your career and any step in your career with that lens, it's going to serve you, and you're going to go as far as you want to go.
That is great advice. It's very similar to kind of our sentiment of this year's summit, which is around leaving your mark and making your mark. And so I love that. If you're going to be a piece of grass or a blade of grass, be that blade of grass and be memorable and leave your mark. And as you said, leave those footprints so that you've left that trail of where you had an impact in whatever role or position it was that you held. So I think that's a really great thing for folks to consider as they're sitting in their current seats and or they're aspiring for another seat. How can they leave that impact and those footprints behind? Well, Holly, it has been such a pleasure having a chat with you today, and I loved learning more about your story, and just kudos on all the great things that you're doing at Trane, and I'm sure that you'll continue to have a great impact and leave those footprints at both that organization and in this industry. So thanks for having a conversation.
No, great to be here, and certainly love all the work that you're doing as well, and look forward to continued discussions.
Thank you for listening to Hear Her Story, a podcast produced by the Women in Manufacturing Association. Be sure to share, review, and subscribe to Hear Her Story on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen.